All right, let's. I met Jay Sukow in 2005. We overlapped for about a minute in Comedy Sports Chicago, and I barely got to play with him. Then we were both teachers at the Second City in Chicago, and we played in the faculty jam together. And at the faculty jam, it was kind of whoever showed up could play. There was no real structure to it. And every time Jay played, he would walk into the green room, and he'd be like, "So what form are we doing? Yes and? Cool." And it gave me delight every time. I've told that story a million times. I just love it. He's done 10 minutes with hundreds, I don't know, thousands at this point, improvisers from all over the world. Give it for Jay Sukow.
Oh. Well, thanks, Rich and Roland, for putting this on, folks. Yeah, I'll be honest, I'm real nervous, and I'm real nervous to go last. Because this has been just such a great talk. So kudos to putting this on, and all the speakers before. It's just like, I mean, each one of those lessons right there, I mean, that should be part of a book. It's amazing. So I'm just very excited and honored to be a part of this right here. This is about giving the laugh and not getting the laugh. And so, from my experience, these are just things that work, and these are all what we're talking about are tools, right? These aren't rules. And like going back to what Andy talked about, there's no like or there's no one teacher that's like, here's the way to do it. And it's funny, I think, as the more you teach, the more you get students who go through and come to you and say like, okay, you tell me how to improvise. And it's like, no, that's not, we don't have the answers to that. And all of the teachers who have talked up to this point have all had great points. And it's kind of been the same. I feel like the theme is kind of the same, which is yes and yourself. I mean, that's the first thing you have to do in order to facilitate everything else. And so what I'm going to talk about today are just some options. Think of this like a cafeteria, and whatever you can, try it out. And if it works, great. If not, just go ahead and put it back and leave the rest there as we go. Also, what I'm going to be saying today, none of this is an original thought of mine. Like none of these are original thoughts. These are just things I'm really good at hearing things people say and then using those and pushing it forward to go. So a lot of everything I'm telling you today are just things I've noticed other people say or do as we go. So none of this is mine. I don't have a single answer right here. But the first thing I want to do is, you are all hilarious and brilliant. So just assume that that's the case. All right. And even if like Annie said, oh, I'm not that way. It's like, no, for this, just assume the fact that we are all funny people right there. And you are all brilliant as you go. I've never met a dumb improviser. So just take that upon yourself. Too many times we set ourselves up in these scenes to be mediocre, thinking there's a reward in that. So just assume that you're good. And as you improvise these scenes, just assume that you're competent in them. There's more reward for that. But yeah, so far, so many great points from all of these speakers. Really, I loved it. It's all about really, working together to focus on them to how can you help this for what I'm talking about here? How can you help facilitate their idea? Where do you find your place in what they're doing? And then they get the reward rather than you get the reward of the laugh. Like you're all going to get enough laughs in your lifetime as improvisers. So it's not like there's a shortage of that. It's not like you walk into a space and it's like, okay, there's only 19 laughs in this room tonight. It's not that. There's enough for everyone. But I think once you relax and you're more comfortable with who you are, then you're able to bring that to the stage, and you'll find that the laughs come easier once you're at that point. So we're going to be talking about how you find that and how you can give someone the laugh, how you can set them up to get the laugh. And if you think of it like volleyball, you're setting them up to spike the ball. So you don't have to spike it. The ball comes to you, set them up for that, right? Another analogy I was given was, I was taught was, it's like playing Frisbee. So you throw the Frisbee, you don't want to throw it right to them to make it too easy. You don't want to throw it over their head and then make fun of them and say like, look at that jerk. You want to throw it far enough so that they reach out and they catch it and it looks awesome. They look great catching it, like they dive and catch it. And what Andy said about the Matrix, I think is so true. Like in the Matrix, Neo goes, I need guns. And what happens? Every gun appears, right? He has everything he needs. And like we just heard, it's like you have everything you need right there in front of you. So just realize that. And there's so much inside of you already. So it's just a matter of bringing that out right there. So what I want to do is a couple things. I want to talk about, this is something that struck with me early on is I had a teacher once say, don't yes and evil. And I think that's a good rule as you go, because when you're, think of it in, put yourself, use empathy a lot in this and some vulnerability, but we have to give people space to be that way. You know, we say like, oh, trust your scene partner, but you have to be trustworthy. That's the first part of it, is like, you can't just go, yeah, just yes and that thing that's inappropriate or dangerous. So you have to make sure that you're trustworthy enough and it's a safe enough space that everyone can flourish as we go. And I think too many times we let our ego get out of control, and we look at improv as like a competition of laughs. And so we're going to take that away a little bit today. So realize that you want people to say yes and you want to set them up to succeed in these ideas, rather than like, it's a challenge, yes and this thing, which is very inappropriate. That also goes for when you get suggestions from the audience too. Think about what you're asking for. So when you ask the audience for a suggestion, if you ask them for anything at all, then just be aware that they're going to shout anything at all. But if you ask for something really specific, and I don't mean like, tell me your favorite third song off this album. I mean like, hey, what's a, line of poetry, something like that. So how you ask for a suggestion as well could help. And so what I want to do is, and one final thing before we do something, because I want to have you all do something. You're never ever responsible for somebody else's references, right? So you're responsible for what you have, but don't feel the need to be responsible for their references. That's on them. You can hear a reference and go, oh, I'm going to study up on that, but please don't feel the need in an improv scene to understand a reference you don't know. That's just not your responsibility. So what we're talking about today, what I want to do is I want you to, you're going to set each other up to succeed, and then you're going to give each other the laughs, but we're going to do it in these breakout rooms. So I'm going to put you in breakout rooms, and there's a couple things I want to have happen. The first thing is when you get in that breakout room, I want you to introduce yourself to your scene partner, introduce them. I loved, we talked about like, what's your game? What do you love to do? So we're going to incorporate that into this next exercise as well. So you're going to get in the breakout room. You're going to introduce yourself very quickly. You might know the person, you might not. And then what I want you to do is say, hey, here are things that I don't want to improvise about right now. And be as, share as much as you would like. But you might say something like, I don't want to do anything about COVID. And again, this is just going to be the two of you in this room. But just talk a little bit about boundaries, maybe like a minute or two. And for our exercise here, let's keep it on the side of like Disney, G-rated. We don't want to do anything that's, wildly inappropriate or anything. This is just a very quick exercise. So have that conversation. And then it's going to be a talk show. Person A, and that is the person whose name is closest to the beginning of the alphabet. You are going to be the talk show host, and you've already heard from your partner what they love to do, what's their game, what tickles them. It might be something like, oh, I love doing wild characters, or it might be something like, oh, I'm really big into this musical group. Your partner also might say to you, hey, I'm scared to do characters, but I'd love to try it in this situation. Whatever it is, as the talk show host, you are going to set them up in there. So you're going to say something like, hey, welcome back. We are just talking right here to Terry. And Terry, you were telling me a story about the time whatever it is. And then that person will continue that story. And you are going to be very excited as the talk show guest. So it might be like, hey, and we're just talking here to Terry. And Terry was telling us that they love watching the leaves fall off the trees. Oh, yes, as a matter of fact, I do. And you will then tell that story. That talk show guest, you will take on and tell that story as if you're on a talk show. Talk show host, you will continue to go, really? Yes. Like you will repeat things they say at certain points. And it's like an unbelievable story. So you will laugh with them. You'll say, oh, I can't believe that. And you're just encouraging them to continue with their story right there. This will only take about a minute. And then I'm going to send a note around to say, let's switch. So then the talk show guest becomes the talk show host. And again, your job is to, as the talk show host, continue to set them up in what they like to do. Continue their game. If they like talking about something, please make sure you set them up right there. Awesome. So I have control. I'm going to put you in breakout rooms. If you have a question at all about this exercise, answer it yourself. I might not have explained it real well, but at the beginning, go ahead, introduce yourself, say things what's your game? What do you love to do? And say things that maybe you don't want to, any topics you don't want to handle. And then you're going to start that exercise. And again, it's going to be real short. Look for the chat. I'm going to send a message around to say switch. And at that point, you will switch who becomes the talk show host and who becomes the talk show guest right there. You're back, everyone. So this is just a quick exercise where it's talking about what can you do to play in the straight comedic duo right there. What can you do to facilitate their need so then they get the laugh? And then how do you find where your place is among that? Again, these are just tools you can use, and learning to set them up to get that laugh right there. It's kind of improv at times can be like dating, where if you get real desperate, we can tell. And then it's not comfortable for anyone. And it's like, because we're trying so hard, and what's happening is you've got people on stage, you've got a team of 6 people on stage, everyone's trying to get that laugh, so they're very nice, but it becomes a different type of energy there. So if you could take a breath and then focus on what they're trying to do and find your spot in there. And if you're all agreeing, hey, and this is a conversation you need to have with your group too, is what are you comfortable talking about? What are the boundaries? Because for some groups, it's different than others. And now we're at a point where we need to have that conversation amongst ourselves. What is comfortable? What are you okay in that situation doing? And then be okay with that. If somebody says, I don't want to do this kind of stuff, be like, cool, I'm down with that. We no longer have to be like, no, we can't censor ourselves. You know who says they don't censor themselves? Our sociopaths. They don't censor themselves. We need to learn how to censor ourselves as we go here. And then this is great. So hopefully that gives you something that you can take away and go, what am I doing to help them get the laugh? I'm going to be fine. If they get the laugh, we all look good in that situation. So this is another tool. And these are tools that you use. Everything you've heard today, these are just different tools. And sometimes you're the one that gets the laugh. Sometimes you're connecting with that audience or you're in the moment. So then be okay taking that ball and having the spotlight. And then sometimes the spotlight goes on other people. So you just know when to do it. And the only way to learn any of this stuff is allowing yourself to make mistakes in an environment that feels safe for everyone right there. All right, cool. If you want to throw into the chat anything you've been taking from all of our speakers today, we've been doing that a lot too, but anything from that last exercise or anything from anyone else today, feel free to throw that in the chat there so that other people can learn from that as well. Wonderful. Roland and Rich I'll send it back to you.
Oh, great. Jay Sukow, everybody. Jay Sukow. Dude, seriously, that Frisbee thing, the Frisbee analogy, just like, I was like, oh, wow. A whole lot of things illuminated for me in